Hello and welcome back to another episode of ADHD Goals. I am very excited to bring a special guest to you today. As you know, recently I have been going through some ADHD coaching training to become an ADHD coach, and that training has been with ADHD Works. And I am very pleased to have on the show another fellow trainee. Her name is Emma Ward. And welcome to the show, Emma. How are you doing?
Oh, hi for having me. No, I'm really good, thank you. Really good. Yourself?
Really good. Now, there has been something I've wanted to mention to you because we were chatting in our last coaching session, but you're from Leicester, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
I'm from Leicester too, originally.
Hey.
Yeah, I thought I'd surprise you with that.
You
I didn't.
know,
I didn't know whether my Leicester accent still was there or not, but it was very interesting when I was hearing you on the coaching course because I've not lived in Leicester since I was for over 20 years now, but I always get my ears prick up when I hear an accent from back home.
uh-oh. Does that mean I'm a typical Leicester girl then?
Well, I can spot it, yeah.
That's blown my mind. Whereabouts in Leicester were you from?
Well, I'm more from Leicestershire, so my family's from Whitwick and Colville, but my mum and dad were both brought up in Wigston.
That's where I grew up in
Yeah,
Wigston.
there
Yeah,
you
went to
go.
Wigston schools and moved to Blaby towards the end of my schooling years. First house in Ayleston, so moved into the city 6 years ago, back into the county. I live in Wexton now.
Ah, fab. Yeah, so I recognise a
Oh,
lot of
wow.
those names. Play football there and stuff like that. So yeah.
That is a surprise.
Well, I don't you often find I don't know if this is typical of all people everywhere, but I find specifically to me that I think Leicestershire is very underrepresented on the television. And whenever you get TV programs that are sort of based in Leicester or Nottingham, it's very interesting to see how the actors manage that East Midlands accent. You can spot the ones that are probably from there or the ones that are trying to have a go at it. And it's
Sure.
very, very tricky.
Hmm.
Um, and there you go. So, yeah. So where I wanted to start with is to just learn a bit more about you and your own journey with ADHD. So tell us a bit more about you and your
Oh,
background.
okay. Well, I shall try not to just sort of start in nappies, as in a lot of his
This
ADHD
is
do
your
tend
life.
to give a lot of details. So I'll try and skip some of the years.
Yeah.
I'll tell you where I'd like to start. And it's one of the reasons that I was a little distracted, believe it or not, before coming on this morning. And there was a friend I had at school, and we were such good friends, very, very close. And, you know, obviously you grow up and things. We've both got children, and I spotted a post on Facebook this morning, and she shared a post from Attitude from
Mhm.
LinkedIn, and about her daughter who is 13 and not wanting history to repeat itself. And I didn't realize that she had been diagnosed with ADHD, and no doubt she probably doesn't know that I've been diagnosed with ADHD. And what reading the story that she's trying to protect and fight for her daughter in school at the minute, and as a Leicestershire school that are just not recognising her daughter as having ADHD or giving her, it's not that being recognised, it's that support, being recognised so she could get the support that she deserves rather than the struggles that she's going through. And it kind of really took me back to two school years and how challenging that was. And it led me to actually out myself on Facebook, because I was diagnosed 2 years ago, at the grand old age of 46. And it's not been about not wanting, it's not about embarrassment and wanting to tell people. To start with, it was very much a case of not actually believing it, to giving me that title, if you like. It's kind of like, well, I'm not sure that's correct, because people were being diagnosed, and you then just think, oh, am I making it up? Have I managed to somehow hoodwink these people? And just reading my friend's post and thinking back to the relationship that we had as friends and the challenges that we had really highlighted to me just how difficult school years were.
What sorts of challenges are we talking about?
Well, I didn't very much go to school in the last year or so, my education. So the most vital, crucial part of my education, I literally would, this is awful, and for anyone that's out there, go to school. But my mum would drop me off outside school because we'd moved to Blaby, and I would cross over the road, and if I had money, I'd get straight on the bus and go back home. If I didn't have money, and I was talking about this just the other day, and it really came back to me with a real bolt, because the level of risk that I put myself at, had no idea. Because some days I would literally walk home. Somebody was talking to me about the woods that were in between Blaby and Wigston and whatever, and I was kind of, where are they? And then it came flooding back to me that these are the woods that I would cut through every day that I chose to walk home. I would sit in the woods on my own. I would, because the feeling of going to school had got so big, being bullied, being called fat, ugly, useless, not being very good at my studies, you're not going to achieve, etc., etc. And until that point, I'd just always just been shy.
Yeah.
Quiet. Now the label was turning, and I couldn't face it.
Yeah.
And I had no idea. So only when I look back, and it kind of really makes me panic and think, gosh, how lucky am I?
Well, if I think back to sort of my school days, I don't ever remember anybody being labeled or diagnosed with ADHD. It just wasn't something that was on the radar, really. So, and I think it's quite well spoken about at the moment that ADHD, if it was a label for anybody, it was most likely going to be for boys that were boisterous, restless, and so anybody who displays ADHD in a different way, and particularly girls, it wouldn't have registered anyway. So it's just very interesting to hear you talk about how those challenges sort of manifested, and without I think also the label of ADHD is changing now, or hopefully it's there's hopefully not the same stigma that maybe there was, but just the very fact of not knowing what ADHD was or what those challenges were, it must have been very difficult to process that, and you decided not that it was easier not to go to school. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Avoidance was the best option.
yeah, I wonder. So, have you contacted your friend about her daughter, or was that just something that you spotted?
Well, interestingly, and again, it's not and I sort of said I've outed myself on Facebook.
Yeah.
I'm normally one of these people that I will be really considered about what I write. And I'll write it 10, 15,
Yeah.
however many times needed. And then quite often I've learned through strategies, coaching, things like that, to hold off before sending.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all of that went out the window this morning because one, I knew I was coming on here, but I just literally shared this post and a mother's words that came with it. And I read my friend's words and it just dragged me back. And I thought about how she was feeling and I thought about how her daughter would be feeling. And this plea that she was putting out there to school, to people around to just listen to her. And I thought, you know what, Emma, get out your comfort zone.
Mm.
And I did write it, rewrite it, and read it a couple of times and reframe it. But I've just shared it with my own experience and posted it and then come on here. And not for any level of judgment for myself, but in the hope that the audience that I have as my friends and work colleagues and family that will share it further and the school will sort of hear from other people. And it's not about berating the school or whatever, but yeah. So, and what I've done about it is I've literally just put my empathy with it and shared that I get it. And let's try and change this as a community, as a society.
Yeah, because I think I'm thinking of somebody I know at the moment who's a parent who's got a child that is coming into their last year of school, secondary school, and for a long time she has been trying to get her son diagnosed, and that takes quite a long time to go through that process. So I think, and again, not trying to berate the school, but I think unless they have got that diagnosis, they perhaps sometimes don't know how to deal with it, and until that time, everybody's caught in a frustrating situation because they just label the child as a naughty boy and deal with him as they would a naughty boy, as opposed to making accommodations for him and trying to help him. And it's got to a point where, they now put him in a special class that wasn't intended to be beneficial, but just sort of keep him out of the way. But on the flip side of that, he's now in this special class where he doesn't have to keep moving from class to class, so he doesn't get lost, he doesn't lose things. He's got a one-on-one teacher practically with, there's just a small number of them in there. And it's actually showed the school that this is actually what he needed. In a roundabout way, it's almost giving him accommodations he's needed, and for being sort of thrown on the heap slightly, is now starting to excel, or show a lot more promise. And it's just a shame that that couldn't have happened earlier, or there had been a bit more intention about making certain accommodations like that. Because I think particularly with boys, or anybody, but I mean, that stereotypical boy who will get frustrated or lash out when he perhaps doesn't understand himself what's going on, or the teachers aren't sort of working with ADHD in the right way. It's just causing frustration for everybody, and nobody's getting the best out of it. So yeah, I think what I'm trying to say is we hope we're moving in the right directions with schools, but I still think there is quite a lot of work to do, and it is probably also quite difficult for the teachers as well. I don't know if they've got the resources and things, so there's probably still quite a way to go in order to make it better for kids that with ADHD at school.
Absolutely. And that was the thing that I found quite hard when I read about this morning, is that the school are batting it back to the parent. You know, this is kind of, we don't have a diagnosis, we don't have resources or structures in place, batting it back. This is kind of your issue. And the parent thought, you know, well, this is the last 2 years of my daughter's education. I'm struggling to get her through your doors each day. Kind of, I'm fulfilling my side of the bargain to get her there, which is where I could really resonate. And then when she's getting there, she's not getting that, you know, identification, that one-to-one support, or any kind of reassurance that they're going to do what they need to, because they don't have whatever they need in place. And so it becomes that issue, doesn't it? It's like, well, you know, who is it that needs to be responsible here? And to me, it's kind of like everybody has to play their part, don't they? If you're getting them to school, then the school needs that support to then be able to do their part when they're there. You know what I mean? It's and just to go back on something that you said earlier, Laurence, about, you know, like the label changing. I think what stopped me from putting something more publicly out, have, you know, told people individually over the last couple of years, people that I've worked with, my managers and some of my colleagues, some of the team, that, you know, when I have been mentoring or whatever, I've sometimes sort of said it on, and, you know, because I've had a particularly bad day where I can't think straight or something, and I felt that I needed to excuse myself, like, you know, apologize for myself, which even in that would then become something that I would beat myself up about when I got home. I could do that, you know, just the you. But in terms of that label, when I announced to a few people that I had been diagnosed, I had somebody turn around and go, ADHD. I've got kids that are ADHD, and you certainly don't have it. That's just another one of those private companies taking your money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, I think, was a big thing in me not announcing it. And when I did put on LinkedIn just 2 weeks ago, that was huge, because I was expecting that response.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing. I experienced something similar. I mean, I'm very lucky that my girlfriend is sort of very understanding and accommodating. She herself, she's neurotypical, but she's learning a lot about it for various other reasons, like people in her family. So she's very aware, and I think it's very important to have people around you that are sympathetic, and you've got somebody like that to turn to. But I think I was explaining. I went out with an old friend recently, and explained that, you know, I'd got ADHD, and it was sort of a typical neurotypical response was like, well, it could just be trauma. It's like, and it just completely took the wind out of my sails. Sort of, it was almost saying, "Oh, you're trying to say it's something else." Whereas, you know, for the last year or so, I've been sort of really lifted up by understanding it as ADHD. So, you know, for whatever challenges that I've had, you know, in my adult life, it all seemed to make sense when I discovered I had ADHD, and I wanted to use that as a positive, and I have been able to use it as a positive to work with it. Whereas in the past, when I sort of tried to tackle isolated challenges in my life, because you're not looking at it as the big picture, it will only as long as you focus on that one isolated challenge, it will work for a little while, but everything else in your life, that is affected by it isn't helping because you're not treating it as one holistic thing. And yeah, it does. What I'm trying to say is I understand that it really is like a bit of a blow when you're explaining to somebody and there's maybe not that same level of support or understanding. And because it does put doubt, you do have doubt in yourself, like, am I, is this right? Am I trying to, get away with something? And it's, yeah, it's a challenge. And I think it probably all comes down to maybe the label of ADHD isn't as accurate as it could be, understanding the attention deficit issue. uh, you know, it just caused challenges for us in, the society that we're in and the way that everything is built in a neurotypical way. But that's not to say that it's not a benefit. And so I think, when you're thinking about companies embracing or making accommodations, it's very important for the company to see how can we get the most out of these people with ADHD rather than seeing them as broken and it's their duty to sort of be inclusive. I I I, I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but it's
I hear what you're saying.
people aren't recognizing the benefits of what people with ADHD have to offer, rather than seeing it as, oh, we've got to accommodate these people, because then it always feels like, you with ADHD, you're trying to make excuses for yourself, and people are going, oh, well, we're being accepting for your excuses of, I'd like to not be able to do X, Y, and Z. And it's just, that's where that fear comes from of saying to somebody who's got ADHD and they say, oh, is it? Are you sure?
I, I I really sort of resonate with what you're saying there, and the benefit are the same skills as everybody else, aren't they? The benefit, all we, I don't know about for you, the diagnosis was important to me because it helped me to know that I wasn't broken, I wasn't a failure, I wasn't stupid or lazy or all of those things. And now I am medicated, and that's made a huge difference to my life. I was treated with depression from my teenage years, and I have comorbidities with general anxiety disorder, and there's things that over the years that have been misdiagnosed as well. And I think, gosh, should have been taking Prozac at 17. What should I have, these are the things. But I do have, and this is coaching speaking, I do have, some really good qualities, and I can bring a lot to business and a company, the emotional intelligence, the empathy, that care inside is, I can't switch that off.
Yeah.
What I can switch off or struggle with is assertiveness, because I'm a people pleaser.
Yeah.
I don't want to upset you. So I will help you and coach you and mentor you. Am I going to tell you that's where I struggle? So yes, in the job that I've just come out of as a leader, that can be quite challenging. The end goal would become the same, but it would look very different. And if you want me to do something, I will sit and do it until the end of time. Now, I'm not going to pop off the shop. I am just going to sit here. And I would really love for employers or whatever to know that reasonable adjustment is to put us on that level playing field with our neurotypical friends and colleagues. It's not, again, I can hear somebody saying, oh, well, what do you want to get out of that diagnosis? Equality of being able to do the same job and going, actually, Emma's going to really struggle with that. I need to repeat it. I need to record it, because when she leaves here, she's going to really struggle to recall that information. That's all I need. I can do the. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, but
really frustrating.
Yeah, I think, but it's also saying, well, what has Emma got that are her strengths, and how can we make sure that we're making the most of those? Because we can look at through history. I think there was I can't recall what the book was called, but it was by Dr. Ken Robinson. I think it was called Out of Our Minds, and he basically it's about education, but how it doesn't serve a lot of sort of creative people, and by that it was sort of people that we would probably label with as ADHD. It didn't fit into the education system, and therefore education didn't work for them. And luckily enough, these were people that then changed our world and society through sort of music, dance, acting, things like that. People that have had a huge impact on us, but sort of had to express themselves physically, musically, creatively, making those different leaps of imagination and thought, which are skill sets that people with ADHD have. And it worries me that, in an age where schools seem to be, well, it's not the schools, it's like government are making the schools focus more on maths and science and things like that, and just reducing physical education, arts, drama, and all these creative things. And what is that saying to people that perhaps are going to express themselves, or have an enjoyment from going to school through these activities? And like you say, you have a good empathy when you're at work, and this is going to be really important. I think the more we're interacting with AI and bots, we're going to need people with people skills to get the most out of people. And if we're not giving them the opportunities to excel at things like that at school, then that's not going in the right direction either.
No, absolutely. And I think this is it, isn't it? It's like the world is changing rapidly, and it's a society of inclusivity. However, there's still a lot of areas that are just being not understood, or not sort of cared about. So for me, and you said a minute ago about creativity, even back to school, I loved woodwork, I loved metalwork, I loved art, hate drama, hated drama, role play.
Yeah.
No. I didn't like to act, although in my job that I've just left, and the job that I'm sort of doing and have done in the past, standing up in front of a room of people, talking and, leading training, and I can act class clown. Go out dressed as a banana. However, role play, nope, because it's that judgment, it's that fear of what are people going to think of me.
Yeah, the RSD.
Huge, absolutely huge. It's the perfectionism, the RSD, and yeah, it's been the real bane of my life. So if I can help other people, creativity, art, craft, that's what has helped me over the last few years to have an outlet and recognize that actually I have a creative mind.
Yeah.
But I've had to understand what creative means, silly as that sounds.
Well, that's it. I mean,
because
I've worked with a lot of people in my old job. Like we always have to do workshops where we were creating websites or things that people thought, oh, that's design or that's arty. And you say, oh, you bring other people into it and say, well, what are your thoughts? And we say, oh, we're not creative. And, well, come on, you are. Everybody can be creative. Just because you might not be able to sketch it or draw it in a fancy way doesn't mean that you can't be creative with your thoughts. And I think that label of creative sometimes makes people think, oh, that I can't be creative because I can't draw. And it's no, this creativity comes in lots of different shapes and sizes.
I agree. It does come with the label of drawing, though.
Mm.
You think creative, you think, oh, well, I think you, me. That's how I think.
Mm. So you mentioned the sort of transitioning out of your old job, but I was just wondering, so what about after school and into your throughout your adult life? How is your sort of how did your ADHD progress, or any particular challenges that you found?
Yeah, so I struggled with job to start with, because I would just do what I was told.
Mhm.
And every job I wanted to learn. I've started as your telephonist. I really like working with the salesman. I want to learn how to do his job.
Mhm.
So whatever job I was in, whether it was just extraction or hair, I wanted to do what they did.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean? Because I've become really invested in it.
Yeah.
And if somebody said, "Oh, this is a good job," I'd be like, "Oakley dokley." So I would leave my job and go and do the job
Yeah.
because it sounded good because they sold it to me.
Yeah.
So it took me a long while to settle down. I went self-employed several times. I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, this is a good idea. I'll do it."
Yeah. How did you cope with being self-employed? Because I think that sometimes if in particular work environments you start to feel that there isn't any freedom to to be creative or do certain things, so you think, well, I'll go the other extreme and I'll become self-employed, and you think, brilliant, I've got all the freedom in the world, and then you're like, it's too much freedom, and I can't do the accounting or whatever admin side that you're protected from when you're employed. Yeah. So how did you cope with
So
self-employment?
interestingly, made a success
Mm.
of each thing that I did. I before it was a big thing, like many moons ago, 25 years ago, decided to do like catering and the sandwich delivery and whatever. Went
Mm.
round, got an idea, went round, built up a business, absolutely smashed it. However, getting up at 4 o'clock every morning because I was making everything, then having to go and buy everything and then doing everything within 9 months, I burnt out.
Yeah.
Had nobody to do anything, so that was that.
Yeah.
Just gone. Trained as a holistic therapist, did really well, and I still keep my hand in every so often now. But due to physical issues, couldn't continue doing them. So there's been reasons sort of that have stopped it. The most successful was being a slimming world consultant, which after losing a lot of weight, because I have an unhealthy relationship with food, which again, I can absolutely sort of link with my ADHD.
Mhm.
But I'd gained a lot of weight, and after having my son, I joined Slimming World in 2007 and had like 8 stone to lose including baby weight, it was 8 stone in total. And so I bought a franchise and went self-employed with them for nearly 11 years,
Yeah.
while still working at the county council and bits and bobs. I then went full-time employed with them doing big district manager role, which I've just burnt myself out on because again, it holding the responsibility and struggling to pass it to other people.
Mhm.
So
I just
I do struggle with to answer your question, I struggle with the organisation and doing everything. So tax account would have been done the night before submission. You know, I would be phoning like my mum who lived in Norfolk, Mum, we need to do the account. And my friend would come round and everybody would sit there with receipts that I'd like collected, and it would include net and it would include Asda and everything, because I would just chuck every receipt in a box for 12.
Mm-hmm.
So here I am, self-employed again as of this week.
Yeah.
And this time I'm at that freedom stage of, okay, I have several different avenues, but nothing concrete. Holy moly, what have I done? Have I put everything at risk yet again?
Mm-hmm. Well, I suppose that element of risk does apply. It helps you avoid procrastination, or the more risk skin in the game that you have, you're like, well, I've got to do this now. But I was just
24/7 until that I've been coaching myself.
That's the danger, isn't it?
Wrap.
Yeah. Hi guys, just wanted to briefly take a moment of your time to thank you for listening to this episode, and just to ask you for your support. If you are enjoying the podcast and you are able to, I'd love it if you could subscribe on whatever platform that you're listening or watching on. And if you know of anybody that you think this episode will help, then please share it with them. That would be a really, really great help. And if you know anybody, or you yourself are finding that the challenges of managing your ADHD are getting a little bit too overwhelming, and you want to find a way of moving towards your goals, then please do not hesitate to get in touch. You can go over to my website at ADHDgoals.co and you can connect with me there. Okay, well, without further ado, I will take you back to the episode. One thing that struck me when you were sort of just listing some of those self-employed ventures, or just some of the jobs that you named there, you said the one that was most successful was the Slimming World consultant. And what struck me there was, what's your relationship with purpose? As in, of all the things that you listed there, the idea of being a Slimming World consultant, helping people to achieve something that is going to have a big impact on their lives. If I was to think about myself and what that would mean for me doing that job, that to me stands out as having the most purpose to it. And I wonder whether that resonates with you at all, in terms of, did you enjoy that more because of that, or how does having a purpose sort of influence your enjoyment of the job?
Oh, thank you for saying the word purpose there, because I don't think I ever saw it as having a purpose. But I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of what drives me. It's having a purpose, but it's never sort of come to me in that way. And I guess the fact that I'm returning to be a Slimming World consultant on Saturday, but in a completely different route, whatever, to the one that I was successful in all those years ago, which I left it 7 years ago to do the district manager role. But it's that people do depend on you to be open and be there and to show up 52 weeks a year, the group, and you find it hard as a consultant to have time away from it, because you make that promise of that consistency. And I like consistency. But it is, there's something about being able to support people to achieve one of the biggest battles, because when you're overweight, the feeling of shame of guilt, of disgust. I can only talk about me. You know, I've gained half a stone whilst I've been off work sick for the last 3 months. And took a photo the other day, showing my partner took a photo of me showing the banner that I was putting up. Delete. And I just took one of the banner because I just looked at it and I was appalled. What I see is probably not what other people see. However, I understand when somebody comes to me and they say, this is how I feel, and I can sit there and genuinely look them in the eye and say, get it. Get it.
Yeah.
You know, if you're ready, I'm ready. And I'll do absolutely everything I can, but I can't do it for you.
Yeah.
And I can feel myself getting a bit emotional with that, because I guess the purpose is not even the weight loss. The purpose is letting somebody else know that they're not alone. It's not their fault. And, you know, I don't know if you've ever heard it when someone says, oh, look at them, like, feed in the face, you know, whatever. And I'm like, you don't know what's going on for that person. When I've got rejective sensitivity dysphoria kicking in, I would quite happily sit and munch my way through whatever, because you're trying to fill a hole that cannot be filled with food, but you don't know that.
Yeah, I have what I call my procrastination pit is basically my sofa, and it you know I can resemble being focused during the day, or you know depending on whether I'm doing the right tasks is in question, but I can keep myself busy throughout the day. It's just in the evenings, if I haven't got the kids or I haven't got anyone to see, what I then do with that evening is critical, because I'll default to, I'll put something on the telly, and then that something on the telly then become, you know, now that we've got, you know, the age of Netflix or you know, box sets and everything, it's just go, okay, here's the dopamine now. Next, next, next. And your hands have got to do something. So it's either eating or drinking. And yeah, once you understand, you know, sort of speaking from an ADHD point of view, that your body is saying, where am I going to get this dopamine from to switch off the internal thoughts, the mind racing at 100 miles an hour? If you can sit in front of the television, you don't have to think. If you can, if your hands are busy, either feeding yourself or whatever, then the body's like going, brilliant, got the dopamine there. But it's you know, not it's not helpful to you in the long run. And but you can see, and it's about having that empathy towards people, which I probably wouldn't have done, you know, 10, 15 years ago. You know, I would have looked at people in the same way as what you described. But it's incredibly
Which
powerful
is
to be able to,
natural, isn't it?
yeah, it's incredibly powerful to say, okay, well, I understand what's happening here. Yeah, and sort of like going back to that purpose, how can I help? I suppose so to continue the purpose theme a little bit. So can you tell me a little bit about what brought you to the point at which you decided that training to be an ADHD coach was right for you? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, thank you. So, for a good sort of 12 years, I have been delivering sort of side-by-side coaching, feedback, mentoring, helping other people to start up their own small businesses and all of the challenges that come with it. And recognizing, I guess, even back through the holistic therapist that, you know, I trained in, helping other people to feel good, to understand that that purpose of them having something tangible to get a hold of led me, well, I suppose all of that, then being diagnosed obviously with ADHD a couple of years ago, which was a real bolt out of the blue, really came from me having a bit of and I say that sounds like I'm sort of not taking it seriously, but I had a breakdown and went to see a psychiatrist and was diagnosed with the comorbidities, but it still didn't feel quite right. And it was then the ADHD sort of came on the card to then follow that route, you know, having had other people around me who shared their experiences that I could relate to, and then sort of speaking to my sister and whatever. So all of that. And then I realized actually with ADHD work, when I logged in to sign up again this time, and I say again, I realized that I've actually signed in a couple of times before. It actually runs over the last couple of years. So it must have been something. I remember my best friend saying, "Oh, do you follow Leanne Raskell on LinkedIn?" And I was like, "No." So that has kind of been something that's just been ticking over, watching, and I've gone in and looked at it. And then because I've really struggled with my mental health over the last few months and physical health, also diagnosed recently through a long battle with fibromyalgia, on top of what feels like a hypochondriac kind of list of things at the minute. I was like, I need to come out of the role that I'm in. I can't be full-time working 60 hours a week, you know, because I can't switch off as well. You know, I would sat at my desk at 10 o'clock at night because, well, I must do that.
Yeah.
And I said to my friend, I don't know what to do. So I was sat looking at other management roles and whatever. And he says, what are you doing? You're going to just go from one thing to another. And she says to me, so why don't you do the course?
Yeah.
Because she's actually then had some coaching with ADHD work.
Yeah.
And she's like, come on, because you'd be brilliant at it.
Yeah.
And I was, and so that is why the ADHD side of it, because where I was focusing was that I didn't necessarily want to do just life coaching, and that, I didn't mean it was just life coaching. I knew I needed more. I knew I needed more than that. And then I was thinking of like the business mentoring and, you know, and then it just dawned on me that actually what I wanted was the purpose to help people feel like differently, like I did, having had neurodiverse coaching.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where that was born. And then everything else that I wanted to need around that, because I'm thinking, okay, so anybody that becomes an ADHD coach are going to have similar qualities to what I've got, you know, because they're, you know, we're all different, but we're going to have similar qualities, similar ideas. And the creativity that, again, has been instilled and given as a belief by those around me that I've done over the last 3 years, kind of like, okay, that could be something that sits side by side. And also I'm looking at drawing and talking therapy as well. So I want to help people. I'm going back into doing just one group a week, the Slimming World, which kind of gives me that anchor of what I know that I can do and I am good at. Perfect. Nobody ever is. But I really want to help people. And this feels right. It feels like all of a sudden that everything that I've been learning and building up and the challenges that I have, and it really worries me, Laurence, because I can get completely mind blocked. I know my stuff, but you ask me in a test about something and I don't know, something similar, like simple one day, like what's RSD? And I'd be like, because it's that pressure. So I feel like it's coming together. I know it sounds really corny.
Yeah. No, I have a sort of a similar feeling as well. When you said that it feels like all these things that you've been doing are coming together, I had a similar feeling myself in terms of, as I was saying earlier, that when I focused on, before I knew I had ADHD, I would be sort of trying to create solutions in my life for specific isolated areas. But all of these things, I think, were playing into perhaps strengths that I could use as an ADHD coach. So, um, so I was a UX designer, so that's designing sort of websites and apps and things like that. And there's a design thinking element in that is about communicating to a group of people what everybody's thoughts are and getting those thoughts onto, you know, physically up on a whiteboard with post-it notes. But that sort of visual thinking is all really helpful people with ADHD to sort of stop the 100-mile-an-hour thinking inside their head, but then just get it out and in front of them. And I thought, this is really useful for ADHD. And I remember during lockdown, I had sort of thought, I need to get more exercise. So I'll learn to be, I'll train as a personal trainer. And, physical exercise is a huge part of, maintaining that dopamine level. And I thought, it's all coming together. And then when I got the, ADHD diagnosis, I was like, this all makes sense. And so the coaching aspect seemed like I don't need to divide myself into trying to be 100 different things now with all these different things that I would pursue individually, but would divide my attention. I can put them all under one umbrella and focus on that. And it's the first time in a long time where I've thought, for me, my purpose has just had one column, as opposed to, well, if that doesn't work out, I've always got this. I've got to spin these plates in order to find out which one's going to work. And I wonder, so do you have a specific, with your ADHD coaching, do you have a particular person in mind, or if there's somebody out there listening that you would be working with specifically, or is it a more general thing? And I just wonder, with the Slimming World role that you're doing as well, whether you see there being any overlap at all, where because we're talking about, ADHD can cause certain levels of behaviors, like with addictions and things like that. And whether there might be like an overlap with the sort of Slimming World and the ADHD coaching. I don't know. Have you given much thought to any specific niche at all, or whether it?
I know that's quite fascinating. How again you've kind of pulled things together, and in terms of the connections that I've made whilst talking to you and seeing the post this morning, I think what the beauty of it is, and like, even though this isn't coaching, it is in a way, because we're talking about experiences, and it helps you to then relate and align. Because what I love what you've just said, and it's really helped me, is the fact that you feel like you've got everything in one column. Whereas I have got those 500 channels open in my mind, as you probably did when you decided to make your move or your switch, and anybody would, because change is not something we do lightly or particularly like. So at the minute, prior to coming on here, I was thinking, I have a level. I've got cinema consultant. I have Emma, who has all of these qualities of the leadership and the mentorship and blah, 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 holistic therapist, drawing and talking practitioner, blah, blah. You get the idea. And nice big sort of family tree sort of waiting to drop down. But I get, and obviously ADHD coaching. Whereas actually and I've got really hung up on, you need to have like a website for holistic creation, and I need a website for this, and I need that. And then I'm like, Emma, this is going to be tricky. And I'm like, yes, you need lots of different things to keep you interested,
Yeah.
driven.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got to get out of bed each morning. But actually, it is me
Yeah.
at the top, and doesn't really matter what it call myself, holistic creation. Really quite like it. Looking after the whole
Yeah.
and being creative within that. And what I can offer people is the benefit of my experience with any of those. So my niche from talking to you today is anybody that, and no, I hadn't linked them in world before. It hadn't even crossed my mind. That was just what I knew. And it was like, yes, I can make a difference. This was kind of like here, so I've got two columns, if you like, with everything with those little sort of branches. So realistically, for what we've sort of said, when I read that post this morning, my passion exploded. Or the injustice of not the school, of the student, so to be able to support parents who have maybe teenager that is going through challenges that I can empathize and relate to help them understand, maybe to use some of the creativity. So I really want to do these art and wellness workshops. I did one for neurotypicals through a coaching session, and it was really, we just used watercolor, we used glue and all sorts of things, and it was about inviting that inner child out to play and parking that critical adult and learning about ourselves, learning to see something good in everything that we do. And it's something that's really important to me. It came as one of those things. That is my niche that I want to pull in to the ADHD coaching, and hence why I'm doing the drawing and talking therapy, because that's designed to not counselling, just like ADHD coaching, you're not trying to be a therapist, as in a, psychologist.
Yeah.
It's about helping somebody to learn about themselves. That's for adults that I'm going to do the drawing and talking therapy. So you can probably see how I can have it listed under lots of different branches. But what you've helped me to see there is actually, I want to help anyone that is diagnosed, undiagnosed, who has any challenges that they want somebody to relate to. Specifically for ADHD coaching, I'm your girl, you know what I mean? You've got these things, but equally, whether you are neurotypical and struggling with your mental health, I've got things in my bag that can help them as well. I don't know if that.
Yeah, it's visualized, it's coming together in my mind what you're saying.
If you can help me to piece it into one
Yeah,
thing, it's amazing.
Because I think what you were saying before is like, and I've been there as well. I've had various different. I mean, if you were to go into my whatever you call those accounts where you buy domain names, the amount of domain names.
Two so far.
Oh, in the past, I've it could be up to hundreds. Domain.
Oh, okay. This is only in 2 months, so
yeah.
okay.
Have ideas, specific ideas, and then you think, oh, I'll do that. So buy the domain, you buy the .com and then the .co.uk and the .uk. Oh, the amount of money that I waste on ideas that never come into fruition. And you think you're going to have a website for each, and that you're going to be representing yourself as one specific thing to each of those things. But what that does is that gives you an excuse when that fails, because you're like, I'm going to spread myself thinly across all of these things now. And when that loses my interest, I'll just move on to that. And I've got, because this will be better now. And I think by by bringing those all under one umbrella, you take away that temptation to say, well, this isn't going quite as well as I thought, or I'm faced with a challenge today of doing that thing that I don't like. Maybe that won't work, so I'll just work on on the other thing. And you're not really. It's like what's that story of the two wolves, and it's the battle between two wolves, and it's the one you feed that wins. You got to eliminate that by saying, well, I'm just going to feed the one thing in order to make it work. But I think what you were saying about use the word holistic a lot. But in my mind, what that means, I think we were even talking about, how ADHD was being misdiagnosed as the things in earlier on in your life. I think to have ADHD coaching, to call yourself an ADHD coach and have all those separate interests as well, is that the chances are, in order to coach somebody to manage their ADHD, things are going to be a solution for them for a while, and that will work. And then because of that interest, the part of the brain that is looking for variation and interest, that solution's only going to work for a little while. And so to have the answers, or to be able to identify other things that can work for them, and for you to have sort of experience of that with various different other therapies that you are trained in as well. I think you can bring all those in under the ADHD coaching umbrella, and not have to split your time between different, digital locations. But
my mind's like blown and bouncing around. That is, I'll tell you how helpful that is. Thank you.
What can you tell me a bit more about the with the drawing? What did you call it? The drawing therapy? Because drawing and talking
therapy.
Yeah.
And if you Google just that, you will. It is its own thing, and it's something that works alongside other areas of work. Again, it's what you can do it on your own, on its own. It's something to, whereas like say the ADHD coaching might be for say 6 weeks, for instance, drawing and talking therapy practice, or as like you're a practitioner, if you like, is for 12 weeks. And it's specific. You can either train for working with children and young people, or you can work with adults. Whereas I am working with adults and those with dementia. That's where my focus is going to be. And it can come before therapy, as in, I don't know whether you choose CBT or whatever kind of counselling or psychotherapy you choose. And what it does is it keeps things on the paper. And similar to coaching, in the fact that you're not giving solutions or the why, you are helping people to explore potentially what's going on for them through the paper, by asking questions, by enabling them to, again, do their own thinking and their understanding. So maybe somebody that is non-verbal could use the picture. So it's not going to be my job to interpret them. It's going to be my job to questions and help them to bring whatever is under the surface to the forefront, for them then to decide maybe they want to go and take that counselling or whatever. Probably not a great explanation, but in a...
Do you get, or have you had any feedback from people saying, oh, well, I didn't draw before, and now I've sort of taken up drawing as a hobby?
So this is very new to me. So that would probably ask me again in a couple of months. that very question, what I have experienced so far is well, I don't draw, can't draw. That's irrelevant. That's irrelevant. And in terms of whether they take it up afterward, like I said, give me a bit more time because I've been very focused in everything else. So this is, and again, if somebody wants to, and even if yourself, you want to be like a practice client with it, you know, I would love to do that because this is still in its infancy for me.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited. But I just feel that it's important because not everybody can verbalize how we are now. Not everybody, and I don't know about you, but I've got more confident over the years to talk because of jobs, because of life experience. You know, you might get, for instance, forgive me, Lee, my partner, for me saying this, but for instance, he's kind of like old school, you know, man's man, don't talk about problems or feelings, or that's no discredit to him or whatever. His upbringing, his understanding, it's how his world has been molded. It's not by any means a criticism of him. So for me to sort of ask him how he was feeling, for instance, he'd be like, yes, I'm good. Thank you so much. And I'd be like, you don't look okay. Oh, I'll be all right. Not right. You know what I mean? That sounds like me dad there. And then you've got all like country, but you know what I mean? He doesn't like any of this. Yeah. If I was to maybe sort of work with him and or somebody like that who has no idea maybe what's making them feel the way they are, and that's the kind of stuff that would come out on paper through for them to understand and to express themselves without having the word. And again, people with dementia, they would be able to communicate this way as well, which I think is a really validating and an exciting kind of potential. And I'll know more very soon. So like I said, I'm just, and forgive me, anybody out there that knows more about it than I do, because I am just at the beginning of my journey.
Well, I think the way that you've explained it now it's now making more sense to me as to how that would help, because I have always found that I can be having a conversation with somebody, and they'll be asking my thoughts on something, and I'll realize that I haven't. Well, I may have thought about it before, but I haven't reached what my opinion is on that thing. And I find that having the conversation allows me to, explore what it is that I think about it. And I'm also always very conscious in those situations that I'm exploring, but they might not know that I'm exploring, and they might be thinking that what I'm saying is an opinion where I'm searching for what I think about it. And that's probably because I haven't been able to reach the conclusion in my own head without talking about it, because you've got so many different conversations going on inside your head. And so if you're not able to, for whatever reason, you're not able to arrive at a thought or conclusion verbally, I can see how I assume there's a different part of the brain that's working when you are using your motor skills for drawing as opposed there is to using verbal skills. I don't know if that's the case, but I'm assuming that is. And it's interesting to think that is a way of collecting thoughts and solidifying thoughts, because it takes up so much energy not knowing what you think about something and having so many open tabs on a subject, and to just be able to get something out of your head and almost crystallize it and say, right, that's what that is now. It's really, really helpful. So I can really see how that drawing and talking therapy would work. So So just as I'm just looking at the time now, and I just
Mm.
wanted to ask, so where can we find you on the internet? How can we connect with you if anybody's interested in um, drawing or talking therapy, or wants to get in touch with you for ADHD coaching? Where do you live online?
Okay. So on LinkedIn, I am under Emma Ward.
Yeah. All right. I can
And
put a link. I can put a link in the
oh,
notes to make it
thank
easier.
you.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. On Facebook, my personal account is kind of Emma Ward, but that is a little bit more sort of locked down. I've created a group and that is called Creating Self-Care. And it is a public group. And I started this whilst being off work unwell. And it was sort of designed for anyone to sort of show how they was managing to be okay, whether that, because if I sit and make something or create a card or draw or do a bit of painting, that can be me for 5 hours and it switches me off. And it's been a long time coming to have something like that. So that's called Creating Self-Care. My business name is going to be Holistic Creations. And yeah, really just need to finalize and figure out how to do the website and not spend 4 hours on a logo when that's not what you're meant to be doing.
Mhm.
So, but yes, that's me.
Yeah.
And also, if I can I give something wild a plug, because that is going to be there is a Facebook public page which is Enderby Slimming Wild with Emma.
Swimming world.
So
Well,
that is me and
yeah,
everywhere I am.
fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. Well, it's been a real pleasure to have this time to chat to
Thank
you
you so much.
today. And yeah, it sounds really exciting, just to be at this point where sort of all these things are coming together. And I'm really, you know, excited that you've found this purpose. And yeah, I hope it all goes well. And I'm really looking forward to our next coaching session. I'm talking about our studying now, but
Yeah, with
yeah,
ADHD works.
yeah.
Mhm.
So great. I'm really thanks a lot for
Yeah,
coming on the show and
been
talking
amazing.
so
Thank you so
freely.
much. Like free coaching for an hour. It's been amazing.
Oh
Thank
well,
you.
yeah. I didn't realize that was that you take that
Well, there you
route,
go.
but yeah, it's all good. And yeah, so hope you enjoy the rest of your day and all the best with everything moving forward.
Yeah, you too, Laurence. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Cheers.
And there we go. That's a wrap. Well, there we have it. Thank you so much for listening this far. If you want to hear more episodes, then please subscribe on YouTube or whatever podcast platform you use. It really helps to spread the word. So if you know anyone this episode could help, then please share it with your friends. If you want to follow me on social media, I am on Instagram at ADHD_goals, and you can find me on Facebook too. If you want to get in touch with the show, then you can email me at hello@adhdgoals.co. And finally, if you're struggling to manage your ADHD and you would like me to be your coach, then please head over to my website and get in touch. Until next time, bye for now.